Back to one of our top stories this morning. Former FBI Attorney James Baker soon to reappear before the House Judiciary Committee for yet another high-stakes hearing. Baker expected to face tough questions about Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and those wiretap claims. Let's bring in Congressman Jim Jordan, who sits on the committee and will be in that room asking questions today. Congressman, always great to see you, and good morning to you.
Good to be with you, Julie.
I should note that it's interesting to make note that Baker had a close working relationship with former FBI Director James Comey before he left the Bureau. You will be in today's closed-door meeting. What questions do you have for James Baker?
I think the first area where we start is, look, Andrew McCabe, Lisa Page met with Rod Rosenstein, where Mr. Rosenstein said that he was thinking about actually recording the commander-in-chief in the Oval Office, recording the President of the United States. Right after that meeting, Mr. McCabe, Ms. Page come and talk to Jim Baker. And he took that very seriously, what was discussed in that previous meeting. I want to go from there. What did you guys do? Was there some kind of legal analysis of actually looking to record the President of the United States? What subsequent meetings took place? So I think those are the first set of questions, first series of questions we'll ask Mr. Baker, and then a host of other things we got to get to as well.
Right. So in just about 30 minutes or now, you'll have a chance to ask those questions. He will be testifying after some explosive testimony yesterday where he basically called the Russia probe being handled in an abnormal fashion and also mentioned that it reflected political bias. That's a quote. This is no surprise. I'm not sure if Democrats seem surprised by this, given the Peter Strzok and Lisa Page texts. But is political bias here enough to derail the politically driven Mueller probe?
Well, I do think it was interesting that yesterday Rod Rosenstein has time to sit down with the Wall Street Journal, do a big, long interview where he says the Mueller investigation is appropriate and moving in the right direction, and yet he can't come talk to Congress about the idea that he made a statement about recording the President of the United States. Remember, Rosenstein's the guy who picked Mueller in the first place. So that, to me, is the most frustrating part. Rod Rosenstein, you got time for an interview where you say the Mueller investigation is appropriate and independent, but you can't answer Congress's questions about something you said in a meeting with the deputy head of the FBI at a time when he was, frankly, acting head of the FBI because Mr. Comey had been fired by the memo you wrote. So the fact that Rod Rosenstein was a no-show last week is something that is just not right. He's obligated, as a guy who is Senate confirmed, when the chairman of the committee that has jurisdiction over your agency asked you to come to Congress and testify, you were obligated to do that, and you're supposed to do it under oath, and he was a no-show, yet he's got time to talk to the press about the Mueller investigation.
I want to read a portion of his interview, Rosenstein's interview with the Wall Street Journal. He defends the Mueller probe. He calls it appropriate and independent and says this in part: people are entitled to be frustrated. I can accept that. But at the end of the day, the public will have confidence that the cases we brought were warranted by the evidence and that it was an appropriate use of resources. I have a solemn responsibility to make sure that cases like that are pursued and prosecuted, and I'm pleased the president has been supportive of that. If you got a chance to interview Rosenstein finally, what would you ask him?
Well, I would ask him, talk about frustrating. Why hasn't he given us the McCabe memos that we've subpoenaed? Why hasn't he given us the 302s from Bruce Orr? Why hasn't he opened the FISA application, the part that we know we need to see that Chairman Nunes has talked about? Why haven't we got an update from John Huber, the U.S. attorney who's supposed to be looking into the things that went on in the FBI? Why hasn't none of those things happened? And then we don't get all that information that we are entitled to get as a separate and equal branch of government, and he's a no-show, and Glenn Simpson takes the fifth? Of course we're frustrated. So I want Mr. Rosenstein to come in to answer lots of questions, like about the documents and the requests we have outstanding, but also, most importantly, about this conversation he had with Andy McCabe where he said he was thinking about recording the president.
Just 2 weeks into the job, we should also add.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Exactly right.
All right. Good luck this morning. You've got a big day ahead of you. Thank you very much, Congressman Jordan.